What will come out if we cross a white bear and a brown bear? Are there hybrid species in the ocean? Is it easy to live with the Bengal cat? What bees should we run a mile from? Watch this episode. Today, you'll learn about the rarest animal hybrids in the world. We live in a time when artificial intelligence becomes more advanced every day and ready to model even new species of animals. For example, here, scientists wondered whether a rhinoceros and a zebra could be combined. It seems impossible, but the AI doesn't think so. Do you think this hybrid is real? Or even a computer that learns from mistakes is inherently wrong? Write in the comments. Well, we go further because here we're already waiting for an unusual mix of a pug and a beagle. In this case, people tried to create something new, preserving the best features of both parents. But as it usually happens, they wanted what was best, but it turned out as usual. It was thought that the puggle would inherit the quiet temperament of the pug and the rather good health of the beagle, and also, of course, would look great. It's not quite what it turned out to be, put it that way. Yes, pretty dogs are sometimes born. However, it happens only when the mother is a beagle and the father is a pug. In the case of crossbreeding puggles with each other, it's a complete shamble. Puppies of hybrids will not resemble neither the parents, nor the original breeds, nor each other. To say that there is a great variation in appearance is not to do this justice. And besides appearance, their health also suffers. Here, for example, what they can get: breathing problems together with hyperactivity, allergies, and tendency to obesity, or sore eyes together with epilepsy. But if the owner is lucky and their four-legged friend is born healthy, they'll be stubborn, and raising a puppy will not be easy at all. Morosi. An alternative name for our next guest is the spotted lion. It's a supposedly existing or existed but extinct to our time subspecies of lion, or a hybrid of a lion and a leopard. The animal's features are as follows. The body is up to 5.6 feet in length, weighing about 220 to 400 pounds. The spots are the same as those of lion cubs and leopards. Our guest also has a small mane. Rumors about such a strange creature date back to 1903, and the first official encounter took place in 1931. The Kenyan farmer Michael Trent shot two unusual lions in the Aberdare Mountains at an altitude of 1.9 miles. 2 years later, another researcher went to the same mountains, but he was unable to find any. The man confined himself to strange footprints. Thereafter, reports of Morosi became less and less frequent, and there were no more official documented sightings. Who it was, whether he's still alive, and how he came into the world, no one knows. But there are several versions of what happened. So I suggest that you choose your own. According to the first, the Morosi is a natural hybrid of leopard and lion. At first glance, this is quite an adequate option, except that, in fact, lions and leopards have different lifestyles and are natural enemies. The second possible explanation: Morosi is a lion with a genetic abnormality like spots that have not disappeared since childhood. This is indeed possible if, for example, close sexual contact has occurred. However, this theory does not explain the size of the Morosi that is significantly smaller than that of the lion, and the fact that he, according to eyewitnesses, lives in a high mountainous wooded area, not in the savanna, unlike the usual king of beasts. Hence the third most realistic version. According to it, this is an ordinary lion, but still a young one. Because of its age, these spots on his body have not had time yet to disappear, and life in the mountains means that it was kicked out of the pride. And the fourth, also quite logical option: the spotted lion is a new species of creature about which we know absolutely nothing. Dezo. This is the kind of miracle you get when you cross a yak and a domestic bull. The second name of our guest is Dezo. It's successfully used in agriculture because its milk is fatter and better than that of ordinary cows. And this creature also lives about 1.5 times longer. All Dazos have strong skin and valuable fur used for making carpets and sewing clothes. Males are not capable of producing offspring, but breeders have long learned to artificially inseminate females. These animals are not afraid of heat and do well on flat terrain. In addition, they're very strong and hardy. This is why the Dazo is often used as a pack animal to carry heavy loads in mountainous and inaccessible habitats, or even in snowy fields. So what do you think of this horse-tailed cow? Alright, that's enough fun. It's time to be horrified by the experimentally bred bee that's been keeping the world awake for almost 100 years. I'm talking about the Africanized bee, bred in 1956. At the request of beekeepers, geneticist Warwick Kerr brought ordinary African bees to Brazil. Because of their good physical strength and fertility, it was decided to create a hybrid based on them that could have taken root even in hot climates. The experiment took place under close supervision in a rather large laboratory. It seemed that there was literally no chance of failure. But one day, something unforeseen happened. For unknown reason, the protective flaps of the cage were pulled back and 26 newly created bee families broke free. It was hoped that they would not have been able to adapt to the natural conditions and would have died, but unfortunately for people, this was not the case. Very soon, farmers started to receive news about the attack of rabid huge bees on their plots. No one understood what caused such aggressiveness. People thought they were ordinary bees with a demon in them. Then it was explained to them that it was their improved version. Against this backdrop, the myth of Brazilian killer bees developed. They were later given a more neutral name, the Africanized honeybees, or simply AHB. Some would now probably think that people were hyperbolizing the whole thing, like bees weren't that dangerous. Yeah, try telling that to the little blue macaw that became extinct in the wild largely due to AHB. The newfangled insects took away almost all their nesting habit. And in general, whatever living creature appeared in the zone of their visibility, they immediately attacked it and stung exactly until the target ceased to give signs of life. The secret of their militancy is supposed to be hard work. Killer bees extract pollen much more actively than other subspecies. Their larvae grow faster, and the adults are stronger and more robust. Infections that are fatal to ordinary insects are almost ineffective on African killers. That is why, as you realize, people could not and cannot just exterminate them. Polecat mink. Have you ever seen a hybrid of a ferret and a European mink? No? Then it's about time you have. You're looking at the cutest creature bred from a hybrid male ferret and female European mink. That is, in fact, it's a mutant of 3 species of animals. The idea of creating such an unusual creature was to obtain a beautiful, soft, and delicate fur. As we know, any ferret products are very short-lived. The hair is prone to brittleness, and the undercoat is not too thick. Mink pelts are more durable. The fur is of higher quality, but still inferior to sable. But in the case of the polecat mink, as the scientists planned, everything should have been the opposite. It was expected that people would get thick and beautiful fur, which, in addition to everything else, would also be a lot. At first, the appearance of these creatures sparked a furor. Their fur actually began to be very highly valued and occupied the first shelves in the shops. It would have seemed what could have gone wrong. And then the second side of the coin revealed itself. Not only were the hybrids more aggressive than their parents, but the males were always born sterile. Because of their unruly temperament, the polecat minks became quite difficult to keep on fur farms. Because of sterility, it was more difficult to breed them. People weighed the pros and cons for a long time and eventually decided that breeding such animals did not pay for itself after all. Give us a like if, despite this, you would still like to have such a cute, fluffy pet. Clymene dolphin. This unusual hybrid was created not by humans but by Mother Nature herself. What's particularly curious is that Clymene dolphins resemble 2 representatives of the species that they originated from. Theories about natural interbreeding have been put forward quite a lot. It was even said that this is not a hybrid but one of the subspecies of already known sea creatures. However, because of the difficulties of research, no one has been able to prove it. The range of our guests are temperate and tropical regions of the Atlantic Ocean, including the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. And representatives of the species swim not on the shore but in deep waters. It's because of this, by the way, their study is still quite problematic. Domestic Bengal cat. The history of our next guest began in the 60s of the last century when, in the house of American Jane Mill, a Bengal cat mated with a black domestic cat and gave birth to an unusual spotted kitten. Officially, the work on the breed began after 20 years. But as I think, the main thing is that it began at all. Now we have the opportunity to look at these cute and kind creatures. All of them love to play, are very clean, and incredibly beautiful. A huge thanks to their wild ancestors. They're unpretentious in keeping. Speaking of ancestors, it's from them that the domestic Bengal cat borrowed the hunting instinct. Well, how can we do without it? First, 8 months after birth, this cat will run around the house like a mad one, hunting everything that moves. A little later, it will calm down. Compared to other domestic cats, it'll still be incredibly active. As you realize, the latest hybrids we've had to talk about have only recently been created. However, this is not to say that hybrids are a new fashion trend. The kunga, for example, is one of the oldest beings created by man. Funny enough, people could not believe that such creatures were at the disposal of ancient inhabitants at all. Initially, scientists assumed that these skeletons found in the tombs were nothing but the prey of the peoples of that time. However, the found elements of harness and characteristic patterns of teeth abrasion, speaking about the process of feeding, still prove the fact that these creatures were domesticated. What's more, they were incredibly valued in their day, and now you're about to find out why. Firstly, according to some reports, they are the oldest hybrid created by man. Prior to this, it was thought that flagmen were mules. However, hybrids of a donkey and a horse probably came into being a couple of thousand years later. Kunga's parents were a mum donkey and a dad, the Syrian Kulin. The latter, by the way, is now extinct. According to the same ancient records, one such large male hybrid could have cost as much as 6 donkeys. And here, many people may have some dissonance. Why did this happen? Kungas are very fastidious. They eat only specially prepared food. These creatures are quite aggressive and they seem to poorly succumb to training. Yes, indeed, it was not easy to breed these creatures. However, the result of labor was clearly worth it. All kungas are very fast, hardy, brave, and strong. These qualities do more than justify all the costs of breeding and keeping because there was no alternative at that time. Hybrid of white and brown bears. People have known for a long time that if you cross interspecies animals, it can lead to the emergence of a completely different new species. This is what actually happened in this case. People tried to cross polar and brown bears, which resulted in the birth of the Pisley or Growler bear. To me, the second option sounds more solid in keeping with this strong beast. Well, the Growler inherited some pretty good gifts. Firstly, it's medium-sized. The bear is not too small to be an easy prey for others, but not too big to not worry about low speed and poor agility. Secondly, this bear had gained amazing strength and agility, as well as fairly long claws. All this made the Growler almost an ideal hunter who can accelerate up to 32 miles per hour. And you're gonna ask me, why almost? It's actually quite simple. The fact is that Pisley is very aggressive, often too aggressive. The territorial animal does not tolerate strangers at all, and as a consequence can often get into trouble attacking even stronger predators. As you've already made sure, scientific experiments can go too far. But what if I tell you that scientists have literally resuscitated a row of extinct animals? We're going to talk about them. By the way, the idea for making this episode came to me when one of my subscribers sent me this picture. According to him, it shows a once extinct armadillo species. Do you think this animal's real or not? Share your thoughts in the comments. And next, I'll show you 100% real animals that are going to be resurrected. Yes, they're going to be. The thing is that although science is perfectly developed and the great minds of the planet are able to work miracles, bringing an animal back from the dead and restoring the whole species are still extremely difficult tasks. Nevertheless, once scientists manage to resurrect an extinct animal, this has only happened once, which means that in the future it'll work out too. I'm talking about the Pyrenean ibex, which is also known as Bucardo. Many experts on fauna may object now, like, what are you talking about? After all, this species is still alive and feel good today. The cliffs and mountains of Spain and Portugal are full of these animals, and the species itself is not threatened. That's true. But this species includes several subspecies, and I'll tell you about one of them, that very Bucardo. The subspecies was recognized as extinct in January 2000 when the last individual, a female named Celia, died. But scientists weren't about to give up just yet. They saved Celia's cells and began to think about how they could bring the wild goat back from the dead. They came up with the idea of cloning Celia. A few years later, they inserted the nuclei of Celia's cells into goat eggs, which had previously been freed of their own DNA. The scientists created embryos, which they then implanted into the uteruses of 57 goats. 7 of the goats became pregnant, and only 1 gave birth. It gave birth to a clone of Celia. It would seem it was the legendary success. The researchers managed to revive the subspecies. But the jubilation didn't last long. The baby goat lived for just 10 minutes. But in fact, the experiment can't be called a complete failure. Resurrecting an extinct animal, even for 10 minutes, is already a success. Science is developing. Scientists already know what to do and how to do it, which means that in the future, they'll be able to try again, and Bucardo will once again walk on our planet. Passenger pigeon. It seems that pigeons cannot become extinct at all. There are too many of them, and they're everywhere. But unfortunately, human is capable of exterminating anything at all. The passenger pigeon was the most common bird in North America, in its homeland, and in the whole world in general. In the 16th and 18th centuries, there were 5 billion of them. But then the Native Americans started hunting them, followed by the Europeans, all just to get the pigeon meat. Other factors also played a role, and already at the beginning of the 20th century, there were no wild passenger pigeons left. And in 1914, the last captive passenger pigeon, a female named Martha, died. We all have a chance to remedy the situation. The passenger pigeon is almost the main candidate for the role of an extinct creature that will be resurrected first. And it could happen soon. Scientists have a clear plan. They want to recreate the genome of the passenger pigeon by combining DNA fragments from different samples. They then plan to insert the DNA into the nuclei of stem cells of the common pigeon or the band-tailed pigeon and make them turn into embryo cells from which the bird's sex organs will later form. After that, scientists plan to implant the cells in eggs from which chicks will hatch, looking like a common or band-tailed pigeon but containing DNA of the extinct bird in their cells. All that remains is to crossbreed the hatched birds. The result will have the characteristics of the passenger pigeon. Dodo. You might not have known about the passenger pigeon, then probably everyone knows the dodo bird. It's the most famous extinct bird, and its fate is similar to that of the American pigeon. The dodo used to live quietly in Mauritius, minding its own business, when suddenly Dutch navigators arrived on the island. It happened in 1598, and in 1662 there were no dodos left on the planet. They were eaten by sailors, their pets, as well as other animals that people brought to Mauritius. The dodo simply couldn't withstand such an onslaught, an invasion, and a change of elements in the ecosystem. However, some people believe that the dodo is not completely extinct and show modern photos and videos of the bird. It's not known if this is true or not. As far as I'm concerned, everything's possible. But even if it is, the species is worth restoring, and scientists are actively pursuing this goal. They've collected several biological samples from which DNA can be isolated and obtained. The samples, by the way, come from dried bird heads. Thankfully, there are quite a few stuffed dodos in the world, So far, scientists have only partially restored the bird DNA and began to compare its genes with the DNA of modern birds, potential relatives of the dodo. This is important because the species can be restored only by introducing its genes into the egg cell of a living organism from a common family. The scientists have not yet achieved any special results, but if they continue their work, these birds may well reappear in Mauritius in a couple of decades. Mammoth. It's probably the most famous extinct animal in the world. Only some dinosaurs can challenge this title. However, unlike the dinosaurs, mammoths died out not so long ago by historical standards. It happened about 10 to 12,000 years ago. And some populations died out much later. There are some mammoths that lived when the Egyptian pyramids were already built. In addition, unlike the hot Mauritius, mammoths lived in cold regions, and this is a very important point. Their bodies are found in permafrost, and this is, in fact, an ideal morgue for ancient animals. There, the bodies decompose extremely slowly and retain a lot of genetic material. Scientists find mammoths often, and frequently they get bodies that are preserved almost perfectly. It means only one thing. To resurrect mammoths is quite real. Moreover, it'll be much easier to revive these ancient woolly elephants than many other extinct animals. To resurrect the woolly mammoth, scientists plan to apply genetic engineering technologies and use the DNA of mammoths and elephants. After all, modern elephants are the closest relatives of mammoths, as well as the only candidates for the role of surrogate mothers. In simple terms, if scientists do everything right, they can make an ordinary elephant give birth to a real mammoth. But in reality, of course, everything is much more difficult. It's not easy to get the genome out, but the scientists are confident they can do it. They're going to revive mammoths in the near future and are already preparing a territory for them in the Arctic tundra. Thylacine. Outwardly, it's a small wolf or a dog. Its color is like that of a tiger, and by nature, it's a flesh-eating marsupial. The thylacine was such a hodgepodge. It's also known as the Tasmanian wolf or Tasmanian tiger. It lived in New Guinea and Australia, but died out there quite a long time ago. A large population of thylacines persisted in Tasmania until the 1830s, when a mass extermination of these animals, which were considered the main enemies of farmers' sheep, began. Already in the 20th century, there were only a few of them left, and in 1936, the last thylacine died. But theorists don't believe this. As in the case of the dodo, they believe that a few flesh-eating marsupial wolves are still remaining on the planet and show various videos as proof, though they're still questionable. Still, it's very likely that the thylacine is completely extinct, but they plan to resurrect it. About 20 years ago, scientists began work on the creation of a thylacine clone using the DNA of puppies of this animal, which were preserved in alcohol in the museum. They even managed to extract the DNA, but the material turned out to be unusable. Then the scientists tried to make some genes of the flesh-eating marsupial work in a mouse embryo. It did not give special results. That's all for now. But the work continues, and it's funded by the Australian government itself, which means that success is likely. Cave lion. Scientists can expect success with this animal as well. The cave lion lived in Europe and Siberia until it became extinct about 10,000 years ago. It's possible that in the future this big cat will live in these regions again because the chances of his resurrection are very good. Firstly, the cave lion is a subspecies of the modern African lion. That is, it's as close as possible to it in terms of genomes, and when it comes to the revival of extinct animals, this factor is the main. In theory, some lioness will be able to give birth to a cave lion, if scientists do everything right. Secondly, the cave lion became extinct not so long ago by historical standards, and there's enough biological material and DNA reconstruction. As in the case of mammoths, scientists often find the remains of cave lions which are well preserved, and from which they can take genetic material. If scientists reconstruct the cave lion DNA, then they'll try to embed it into the genome of a modern African lion, and the ancient big cat will be resurrected. So far, scientists have managed to reconstruct DNA only partially. But who knows? Maybe soon they'll find several more bodies of the ancient lions, complete with DNA, and implement their incredible project. What do you think animals from other planets might look like? Would they look like xenomorphs? Or is their appearance beyond our comprehension? Let's find it out. Scorpions and lizards. Let's start with the creatures that live very close to us. On a cosmic scale, of course. The first stop is Venus. 3 years ago, scientists from Novosibirsk State University in Russia studied images of the surface of Venus, which were made by apparatus, and recorded about 24 slowly moving objects shaped like a scorpion, a lizard, and a mushroom. At first, one would assume that they were rocks, but the objects still changed their location from image to image, so we may be talking about real, live creatures. The question arises, how could there be life on Venus if the temperature on this planet is 842 degrees Fahrenheit? Scientists believe that alien life forms do not necessarily have to be similar to life on Earth. Accordingly, the conditions necessary for their birth and maintenance may also differ from what we're accustomed to. So far, it's not entirely clear whether scorpions and lizards really live on Venus, but if the hypothesis is confirmed, it would be a scientific breakthrough. Octopuses. Interesting creatures may live on Europa as well. Although it's not a planet but a satellite, Jupiter's satellite to be exact, the hypothesis is also interesting. Scientists believe that octopuses may live on Europa. The thickness of ice on the satellite of the gas giant can be up to 15 miles in some places, so it's not excluded. Octopuses are benthic animals, although some species on our planet live in the water column. This means that it's the cephalopod-like creatures that can survive under 15 miles of ice. Also, octopuses, because of their lack of a skeleton, can change shape, which would be useful in the harsh environment of Jupiter's satellite. In addition, octopuses are highly intelligent, so they could adapt to the harsh conditions, find the best places under the ice, and survive. It's not known exactly what such cephalopods would look like, but they would clearly be different from their terrestrial relatives. Octopuses are certainly interesting. Dinosaurs are much more interesting. Scientists believe that dinosaurs did not only exist on Earth, they may exist right now, but on other planets. The asteroid which caused the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 to 65 million years ago may also have caused the transfer of life to other planets outside the solar system. So say Japanese scientists who argue that bacteria can make interplanetary travels with fragments of rock knocked out into space by large asteroid impacts. In other words, after an asteroid impact, a lot of rock was thrown into space, some of which Earth's dinosaur bacteria attach themselves to. Many bacteria are famous for their survivability. Scientists have found bacteria on many planets and satellites in the solar system. Therefore, it's possible that together with the debris of the asteroid, bacteria and fragments of dinosaur DNA were transported outside the solar system, fell on some planet or even several planets, and since then a new life has been successfully born there. This principle is the basis of the panspermia theory, which suggests the possibility of transferring living organisms or their embryos through outer space. As for the alien dinosaurs, experts think they must be an advanced version of their ancient Earth relatives. They may have become much larger than Earth dinosaurs, and some experts even believe that other planets may be home to dinosaurs with intelligence comparable to that of humans. But where to look for them? It's believed that the bacteria may have reached the Gliese 581 system, where there may be good conditions for life. Or perhaps dinosaurs made it to Europa, Jupiter's satellite. If so, these subglacial octopuses certainly don't have to be bored. And what about other animals on different planets? Scientists say it all depends on what kind of planet it is. If the conditions on it are as close to Earth's as possible, it's possible that animals like those on Earth will live there. It's even possible that creatures very similar to humans might exist there. However, it's not that simple. Biologist Jonathan Losos from Harvard University believes that in the same ecosystem, animals with roughly the same set of characteristics may behave differently and not adapt identically to that ecosystem. This means that even if animals live on planets that are as similar as possible to Earth, they may not look like their Earth analogs. For example, they may have wings instead of limbs. Low gravity. Other types of planets that are different from Earth can also be considered. For example, planets with low gravity. The most famous such planet is Mars. There, gravity is 62% lower than on Earth. There are plenty of such planets in space, and if there are animals on them, then they look exactly different from those on Earth. They would have less bone strength and muscle mass. They would most likely have long legs, spread apart, and be tall. Animals of this type would be much easier to live in a low-gravity environment. Things will be different on planets with strong gravity. As an example, consider super-Earths. This is the name given to the class of planets that have more mass than Earth but less mass than Neptune. Greater mass usually means greater gravitational pull, and this affects the appearance of living creatures. Animals from super-Earths would be short and stocky. Crocodiles and monitor lizards would do well to live in such conditions, so you can imagine the representatives of these alien reptiles. Such body constitution would give them stability, better movement, and protection from painful falls. Also, animals from super-Earths would have large hearts, since it's much harder to pump blood under strong gravity conditions than under normal conditions. As for upright creatures, they probably don't exist on super-Earths, since the strong gravity would simply destroy them. Other stars. Not all stars are the same. We see the world as it is, but things may be different in other systems. For example, there are stars that are red dwarfs, unlike our Sun, a yellow dwarf. Such star is TRAPPIST-1. There's a planet, TRAPPIST-1d, near it, and if there are animals living there, they're clearly different from our animals. Most likely the infrared range prevails on this world, so these animals have large eyes, about the same as those of aliens. They help them catch light. Also, these creatures are likely to have a reddish hue, which helps them to be seen by others. In addition, these creatures must have thick skin or even something like scales or a shell, which protects them from the excessive radiation. Red creatures in armor with bulging eyes. I like these alien animals. Water planets. From the hot and radiation worlds, I suggest we move to the water worlds. There are planets in the universe that are almost entirely or completely covered by water. If you've seen the movie Interstellar, you probably remember that water planet near the black hole with the giant waves. If life forms exist on such planets, then these creatures must resemble our ocean animals. At the same time, it's likely that they would look more like prehistoric ocean monsters than modern aquatic inhabitants. Their main features would be huge fins, providing fast movement underwater, as well as bioluminescence, the ability to glow. After all, if there is a continuous ocean around, the light will be only at surface, so these animals wouldn't be able to peek at the darkest places of the ocean without a natural flashlight on their body. So we're done with potential animals on other planets, but what about sending our own animals to other planets and satellites? Is it possible? What might it look like? Stay tuned to find out. Participants. Not all animals are suitable for spaceflight, so we need to select candidates. As I said before, bacteria, which can survive in harsh conditions without much difficulty, would be perfect for this role. Also, tardigrades will easily overcome the flight. These creatures, though tiny, are incredibly resilient. They can survive in incredibly cold sea depths and even in space. This is confirmed by the fact that in 2019, Israeli tardigrades survived on the moon after a spacecraft crash. In addition, scientists believe that mice, flies, and surprisingly cows will survive spaceflight. For example, Yakut cows can tolerate frost as low as -94 degrees Fahrenheit, and they also feel fine in the heat, so they'll adapt both to the conditions of the flight and to new planets. Flight. Spaceflight is always a long process, so animals will not be able to overcome it naturally. In order for them to reach their destination, they must be placed in cryochambers where they'll hibernate. Their metabolism will slow down to a minimum, and they'll be able to endure a flight lasting several months or even years. Arrival. Once they arrive at their destination, the animals will not be able to set up or explore on their own, so they must be accompanied by a robot or even several robots on such a mission. They'll help the animals adapt, put them into protective suits, and let them out of the shuttle, and then help them set up a camp on the planet. And then there are several options. In the first, most optimistic one, the animals, with the help of robots, can create colonies and kind of farms on the planet or the satellite. And in the second option, they'll just stay on the planet for some time but won't come back. Researchers are planning to do similar tests in the coming years, so you and I will be able to watch such an unusual space mission. That's all, guys. Would you like to move to another planet? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.